It's Top 5 Tuesday. Colby is going to give you his top 5 free agent targets for the Mariners, and I'll tell you my top 5 Mariners uniforms of all time coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Tuesday, October 15th, 2024. This is Tony Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Top 5 Tuesday, and as the wheel determined on yesterday's show, Colby will be giving you his top 5 free agent targets for the Mariners, and then I'll be doing my top 5 Mariners uniforms of all time. But before we get into all that, shout out to our title sponsor today, GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB, that's LOCKEDONMLB, for $20 off your first purchase. And if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, check out our Patreon. Sign up now to hear us create our 2025 Mariners offseason plan before we show it off here. The wheel has spoken, Colby. And today you're going to be giving us your top 5 free agent targets for the M's this winter. And I assume there are quite a few stipulations that go along with that, correct?
Yeah, which makes this what should be a fun exercise into a kind of depressing one. But obviously, you know, if this is just a top 5 list, then Juan Soto is my number 1, and you know, Alex Bregman's my 2, and Christian Walker's 3, and Pete Alonso's 4, and what the heck, Corbin Burns is still 5, but we have to live in a reality. So basically anybody who's going to be making, I don't know, more than 20 million a year is kind of, doesn't seem likely. Basically anybody over the age of 34, 35, who's going to have a multiple year contract offer on the table. I mean, John Stanton pretty much said it's strategy. I can afford those guys, but it's strategy not to pay those guys. So goodbye, Christian Walker, and so goodbye, Pete Alonso, goodbye, Soto, and all the fun players, goodbye. So they're all out. And then obviously the tricky part here is the option candidates. There's some option players with options who would be on the top 5 list if they were free agents. Absolutely. Hassan Kim, Gino Suarez, Jock Peterson, Brandon Lau, like that's probably 4 of the top 5 right there. But I don't want to play this game of like, will the option get picked up? Will it not? I don't know. If it doesn't, assume all 4 of those guys would be ahead of anybody else I put on this list. So yeah, when you eliminate the guys who have options, I just don't want to try and play that game. Well, this guy might get picked up because this guy won't get picked up because, so I'm not going to do that. We're going to eliminate anybody who is, in their mid 30s, who's going to get more than 2 or 3 years. Stanton's already said no to that. We're going to eliminate anybody who's going to make $20+ million a year because, I mean, we know Stanton is, I mean, like you could probably do it, but that's your only player. That's the only player you get all winter. It's just that one guy. So yeah, when you do that, you're left with a lot of role players. It's not a particularly great free agent class. And even some of the guys who don't quite fit all those criteria, they have some major holes. So it's kind of 6 because 2 of them are like, pick one or the other. It doesn't matter.
Sure.
But number 5 on my list, how about Michael Soroka? Pitcher for the White Sox last year. The numbers do not look good, but something interesting happened when he shifted into the bullpen. In 36 innings, Soroka had 60 strikeouts in 36 innings, 189 batting average against, 303 on base, 291 slug. Yeah, the 20 walks, not great, but this is a bullpen that needs back end help. And Soroka, at least, for 36 innings, gave back end of the bullpen type of performances. He used former top prospect, actually one of the guys that I believe Jerry Dipoto tried to acquire very early on for Mitch Haniger back in 2019 when they started the rebuild, and the Braves just didn't want to do it. And now Soroka's career has really fallen on hard times, so to speak. He's no longer much of a starting pitching prospect anymore. But he does have that in his background. So maybe, if you need some length, he can give it to you. But Soroka misses a lot of bats, or at least he did out of the bullpen. A guy that Jerry has targeted in the past. Really good breaking ball. It is a classic kind of sinker slider type of dude. And again, really took off when they put him in the bullpen. So if you're looking for a back end bullpen guy who's probably only going to cost, $5 million-ish, give or take, he's one of them out there. And there are a lot of guys out there in free agency that kind of fill this role, including old friend of the Mariners, Paul Sewald, could also fill this role. But Soroka's got more upside. And he, since the move to the bullpen last year, he really took off and has big swing and miss stuff. And I feel like this bullpen could use some more of that. So yay, Michael Soroka, number 5.
Yeah, 4.74 ERA, 4.95 FIP, 9.49 Ks per 9, 4.97 walks per 9. Like Colby mentioned, 9 of the 25 games that he appeared in, he started. So some of those numbers are inflated by his starts.
Yeah, he's very, very good as a reliever. So that's what you're buying here. You're buying some upside. You're buying a potential back into the bullpen guy, and you're doing it at not $8 to $10 million because God forbid we spend some money on a reliever. Can't do that because now we can't afford our, first base solution because we gave $8 million to, whoever this year's Ryan Presley or Hector Neris is. So,
right.
Yeah.
All right. Who's next on the list?
Yeah, it's a twofer. It's choose your own adventure. Both Mariners, former Mariners. So
yeah,
you can have Carlos Santana or you can have Justin Turner.
Mm-hmm.
Pick one.
Sure.
Santana, more power, still a really good defender at first base, actually one of the best in baseball, oddly enough. So he does give you some defensive value, switch hitter. He brings more power to the table, still gets on base a good amount. Turner's kind of more of a line drive, use the whole field, higher average type of dude. Both bring clubhouse presence, both bring past leadership skills that we saw in Seattle. We're not guessing if they fit here. They do. Yeah. They work with the clubhouse and all that stuff. They're probably both going to get a 1-year deal, which is why, despite being 39 years old, the both of them, I think Turner turned 40 recently. Despite being older players, they are 1-year rentals, which is why they're not, excluded from this list because it is a short-term deal. It is probably $6 to $7 million. So yeah, it's kind of what do you want more power and defense? I mean, first base defense, keep in mind, which not super valuable. Do you want that, or do you want more, line drive, double, average type of, and which one do you think is going to actually perform next year despite his age? Turner certainly worked in this clubhouse, and this clubhouse looks a lot more, like Santana worked here in 2022. The clubhouse looks a lot different since then. So
yeah, I wonder if you polled the clubhouse and got them to be honest about it, who would they prefer having? And I would assume it would be Turner because just more guys in the clubhouse in this current clubhouse are familiar with him than Santana.
Right. Now, I mean, if you ask JP Crawford and Julio Rodriguez, their answer
might say Carlos.
Right. Yeah. So, it's I'm fine with either. I think either one is I don't want to say solution, but he's part of the solution at a first base DH thing. And the Mariners still have at-bats to give either at DH or first base, depending on what they want to do with Luke Raley. So even if Luke Raley is the everyday first baseman, you still need a DH. You don't have that on the roster. So yeah, I think that Turner and Santana, pick one. They're roughly going to be the same. In terms of money, they're going to be roughly worth the same amount of wins. And they bring roughly the same, off the field skill set, I guess we'll call it, clubhouse presence. So yeah, I didn't see how I put one on the list and not the other, but I didn't want to have 2 of the 5 spots be taken by Santana and Turner. So pick one.
Sure. All right. So we will get into your top 3 here in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you once again by GameTime. So I used to live in New Mexico, and down in New Mexico, there are 0 pro sports teams, and a lot of bands and artists that I listen to skip going there more often than not. So when I moved to Toronto, where there's a baseball team, a basketball team, a hockey team, even a soccer team, and there's great music being played every night in the city, I was right in my element. When I want to catch a ball game or my wife and I want to see a band, I always get my tickets through GameTime. And that was the case well before GameTime sponsored our network and before I even joined the network, because it is truly the best ticketing service out there, hands down. I truly believe that. And now it's getting even better thanks to GameTime Picks. GameTime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I can just go on the app, it'll show me the best deal right away, it'll show me the exact view I'll have, and most importantly, it'll tell me exactly what I'm going to pay with GameTime's all-in pricing, so there are no annoying little fees that pop up at the last second. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB, that's LOCKEDONMLB, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it? Game time. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. It is Top 5 Tuesday. Colby is giving you his top 5 free agent targets for the Mariners this winter, well within reason. Right, we have eliminated all the big names and all the guys that have options tied to them as well. So slim pickings here. Who you got next?
I put him on the list here, but he might fall into that category. Like, he's very close to that category of like a little bit too old, a little too much guaranteed money, but I'm going to throw him on the list anyways, because I haven't mentioned him once the entire offseason, and that's going to change. Max Kepler.
Yes.
The Mariners have 3 outfielders, 4 good starting outfielders. Can they really afford another one? Yes, they can, because again, Luke Raley can play first base. You also have the DH, so you can throw a Arozarena in the DH. You can circle these guys through. Max Kepler, still a good defender in right field. The power profile plays very well at T-Mobile Park. He's hit pretty well at T-Mobile Park in his career as well. Lots of homers. It's dead pull power. Is he a great player? No, he's not. He's also 32 years old. That's right on the borderline. He's probably going to make, I don't know, 3 and 50. And again, that's right on the borderline. So if the market gets out of hand here, no. I mean, even I, who am a huge Max Kepler fan, we shared a moment during a Twins blowout win at T-Mobile Park. Even I am like, at some point I got to walk away, but he's a pretty solid average hitter. He's a pretty good defender. And the pull power is going to work at T-Mobile Park. He is coming off of a bit of a rough season. I mean, it's not his best work.
He wasn't great.
Right. So maybe it's a little bit less. Maybe that's actually an opportunity to get this guy for cheaper. A strategy that will come into play later on the list. Hint, hint. But I think I look at Kepler and I say, look, this is a guy probably hit 6th for me. He's probably still a 20 home run guy. I'm going to get above average defense from him. I like Kepler, the player. I think he's just a solid player. Nobody's going to get super excited if the Mariners sign him. But I do think that there's an opportunity here to buy the dip and ride the reward. And yes, Kepler, a guy like Kepler still absolutely fits in this lineup, in this structure. I mean, it's not as easy as a fit of just saying, well, he doesn't play third base, but you can afford to have another outfielder in the mix and still get everybody else at bats. Like you can get Raley, Arozarena, Robles, Julio, and Kepler. You can get all those guys 500 plate appearances easy, and you can still get Julio his 650. And again, I mentioned this on the Patreon show yesterday. I do want some Victor Robles insurance just in case he becomes a pumpkin again.
Fair.
That's what Max Kepler brings to the table for me. So Kepler number 3.
253, 302, 380 this year. It's a 94 WRC plus. He was worth just 1 win. Went from 24 homers to just 8 this year. Strikeout rate stayed pretty much the same, but his walk rate really dipped. He posted 5 straight seasons of an 11% walk rate or higher. Then he went to 9.2 last year, which is still fine, but then dropped to 5.5 this year. And he did miss some time, but he still played in 105 games. So it's not like this is just a very small sample size either that we're talking about.
missed a third of the season. So again, you're buying the dip a little bit, and maybe because of the struggles,
maybe it's just a 1 year deal. Maybe it's
right.
like 1 year, 10 mil or something like that.
Right, which very much fits into the Mariners' plan. So I think on the high end, it's like 3 and 50, but find me the team that's going to be willing to
think he's
give
getting
Max
that
Kepler.
after this year.
Yeah,
especially when you factor in 3 of his last 4 years, he's posted a WRC plus
below average,
south of 100. Yeah, so
right. So again, I want some Victor Robles insurance. I want a guy who can play multiple spots for me. I want a guy who has the type of power that'll translate to T-Mobile Park, and that's Kepler. So I think when you just, again, because of the struggles this year, he's probably going to slide right under that threshold of like not going to be making enough money, not going to have a long enough contract to just eliminate him from the conversation. So, and not for nothing, Jerry DiPoto tried to acquire him last year. And what do we always say on this podcast? Jerry circles back.
He triangles back.
Yes. So Max Kepler on the list, barely eligible, but again, it's not a great list, guys. I don't know what to tell you. But
number 2.
Yep. Number 2, another guy Jerry tried to acquire just as recently as last year, or as recently as this year, I should say. Ahmad Rosario. Like, nobody's super hyped about it, but Rosario's pretty solid player, at least at the plate. He makes a lot of contact. He's not going to walk. He's up there to swing. He's up there to, get on base, hit the ball, essentially, is what he's there to do. He'll be 29 years old. Pretty poor defender at shortstop. Really don't want him to play there much, but he has played a lot in the outfield. He's played at second. He's played at third. He's kind of that super utility type. He's really good against lefties. And right now, the biggest hole on the Mariners, plan or on their roster right now is second base or third base. Like, they're both pretty massive, and this guy could fill one of those spots and do it at a pretty, decent clip. Again, you're adding contact with this. You're adding some athleticism. It's not the ideal player, and it's certainly not a player that should be the big acquisition. Like, hopefully you're not acquiring him to play 160 games, right? Like, that shouldn't be the plan of the Ahmad Rosario. But he does a lot of things well enough, and he plays enough positions that what you hope is that Rosario essentially becomes your true utility guy, and he just move him around, and he gets, he plays 100 games and he gets 350 plate appearances, and he hits 300, and, he gets on base a good amount because he has to hit for average. And that's the scary part. If he doesn't hit for average, the on base,
he doesn't walk at all.
No, he is not your prototypical CTZ guy. He's a little bit like Victor Robles in that regard, where he's up there to hack. Like, he's going to swing the bat, and if he walks, it's almost accidental. So it's a very similar like approach style, just slashing the ball over the ballpark. Robles is a little more willing to take a walk than Rosario, but again, we're looking for a guy who puts the ball in play, can fill multiple roles within the ball club, and does it at a cost that makes sense for the Mariners. Ahmad Rosario, really good first half, really struggled in the second half. But again, he's there to hit lefties. He's there to fill gaps until you can hopefully call up Cole Young to take that spot. But Ahmad Rosario, Jerry likes him. He does a lot of things well. He's relatively cheap. And I think there's something here. I think there's a little bit more in the tank to go get even. So despite him being 29 years old. So Rosario, again, not a sexy player by any stretch, but he could help.
All right. Number 1.
Yeah. Number 1, again, borderline. Like, this guy might make too much money to be on this list, unfortunately, but he's not close to 30. And so it's Gleyber Torres is number 1 on my list. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Gleyber, not a great year. Not a great year for Gleyber Torres. He did come on a little bit at the end, but Torres is a second baseman whose bat, when he's right, profiles at third base really well. 25 home run power. And, even this year in his struggle year, still a 1.5 win player, still hit 257, 330, 378. It's about league average bat. So yeah, again, you're kind of buying the dip here, like you are with Kepler. But in 2023, he hit 273, 347, 453 with 25 homers. 2022, it was 257, 310, 451 with 24 homers. He'll steal you 10 bags. Like he's a decent athlete. I think he's ultimately better suited for third base, but we've heard in the past that he's been resistant to moving positions from second base. Came up as a shortstop. His defensive metrics kind of all over the place. He'll have a good year, he'll have a bad year. So it's a little tough to know how good he is defensively without being able to watch him every day. But Torres is a guy who could get kind of like the Marcus Semien prove it deal that he got from Toronto. It could get that 1 year deal, and it's probably going to be $15 million, which might be enough to scare off the Mariners entirely. But it's a 27, 28-year-old guy who has a couple 20 home run seasons. He can steal 10 bags. He hits for an above league average batting average. On base skills enough. It'll be at least league average on base. It really comes down to how much power do you get. And if you just repeats what he did this year, next year as your second baseman, he's a massive upgrade over what you had last year. And so, again, could this be a guy? It only takes one team. Could this be a guy who's just like, oh, you know what? He's 27. This is a down free agent market. Let's just give him $4 and $80. And you're just like, well, I'm out. Of course.
Well, and if he is signing a 1 year deal, why would he sign it in Seattle?
Right. So it's a tricky little situation here where do you have to give him an extra year? Do you have to pay him more than the market would to get him to come here? Like, it's a very tricky situation. But again, when you're looking at who you can actually pick within our parameters, you have to take a shot on somebody. And so I think Gleyber Torres would be okay in Seattle. Would he pick Seattle? Probably not. But again, 27, 28 years old, 20 home run power as a second baseman, good enough to not destroy you at second. I think ultimately he's better suited for third. I like Torres on a 1 year deal. I like Torres. I like his bat enough to take a shot on him at the right price, but you can quickly approach the range where I'm just like, I'm out. Like, it's a very thin needle to thread, but considering all the circumstances and considering all the, all the restrictions I placed on myself in building this list, Torres just stood out as the guy who just made just enough sense. Real fast here, a guy who I considered who didn't make the list, Tyler O'Neill. Considered him. Too many strikeouts, too many injury problems, and he's probably going to get, $20 million a year, 4 or 5 years. So, yeah, I would like Tyler Locklear to be on this list, but I just thought he was too. Tyler O'Neill. I would like for him to be on this list. It's the traveler's hat. I would like for him to be on this list, but I just think he crosses over into that plane of like, no, Stanton's not going to okay that. So,
all right. Well, it is my time to shine.
Time for some fun in this episode.
That's right. Top 5 Mariners uniforms coming your way in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL fans can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets. Yeah, you heard that right. $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. The wheel has spoken, folks. After Colby has done his top 5 free agent targets for the Mariners this winter, I am now going to be doing my top 5 Mariners uniforms.
I can just look into the comments right now and see how excited you guys are for my list.
Mm-hmm. They're so stoked.
You just perked up, and you're letting me know down in the comments. I can tell you're.
When you said Gleyber Torres, it was like when Tony got the Infinity Gauntlet.
Yeah,
everyone was just like, "Oh my god!"
I could tell, like, I was building the hype with Mike Soroka, and I could just feel the energy down below.
Right.
And it's like, hey, you know what? If you guys think you can have a better list, try it, but don't include any of the option guys and any of the guys who are going to make more than $20 million a year. Tell me how easy it is. It's pretty darn hard. Back to Ty.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, guys, you don't want to miss Friday's episode, particularly in between segments 1 and 2. and I'll just leave it at that. Colby and I were having a good laugh about something in between segments here. Anywho, so it's top 5 uniforms, not top 5 jerseys. We're talking about the whole kit and caboodle here.
The whole package.
Yeah, the whole package, if you will. And as we all know, especially us Locked On Mariners OGs, when your package arrives, your package has arrived.
Always.
So hat comes into play, and we'll get into that when we get to my number 4. But number 5, very simple, the Sunday creams. I love the Sunday creams. And they look great in that Seattle sunlight on Sundays. Really good uniform. And I've always liked the cream uniforms across the league. Like, I really like the Twins. I really like the Cardinals cream uniforms. It's a great look. So number 4, it's the home whites, but specifically the home whites with the Northwest green bill on the hat.
It's very specific.
They don't wear it often, but it is a great look. It's something that they used to do a lot in the 90s and even the early 2000s. I think they've done it here and there over the last few years. I swear they did it at least once this year, right?
Some would, a couple times, I think. Some would say it's the perfect amount of Northwest green on that uniform, but I have a feeling you might be disagreeing with them later on this list, but we'll see.
Well, number 3 is the Northwest greens. I do like them. I don't love them as much as... We'll never have Ryan Dimmish
on the show again.
Right. I like them. I don't love them as much as most people do. I know there's a lot of people that are like, that is definitively the number 1. Yeah.
Side note, or quick question. White pants or gray? Doesn't matter? Because to me it does.
I think they look pretty cool with the gray pants on the road.
I think that's a really good road uniform.
I think, uniforms, and this applies to every sport. Some uniforms just look better depending on the lighting and the stadium that they're in. Like the Seahawks throwbacks, the best they looked, was in Dallas. Yeah, it was great. Like, they looked amazing in Dallas.
It just popped.
The Northwest greens, like in Rogers Center, look amazing. But obviously they're very unique. It's it's a color that very much stands out that no other team has.
Mm-hmm.
They're very much Seattle. They're very much Pacific Northwest. They're very much the Mariners, right? When you see that color, that's the Mariners, right? There's no mistaking that. And, oh, by the way, you ended the drought in them. All right. So number 2, under most circumstances, this would actually be my number 1, but my number 1 is pretty special. So number 2, and I know a lot of people don't like these, especially people that actually watch these uniforms in action. I didn't. They were before my time. The 1987 to 1991 uniforms, otherwise referred to as the rookie Griffies, because he's wearing them in his iconic rookie card. We all know the one.
Royal blue hat with the gold S.
The gold S.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. The font, it looks like a circus font. Whatever. I think that is super clean. I think it's really clean. I wish that they would bring those back. I mean, they did wear them on the road against the Astros, 5 years ago, 6 years ago?
Font is perfect. It just pops in gray or white. Yeah. So I would actually like those to go back to the primary. Like, those should be just the new home jerseys, in my opinion, because we've seen a lot of teams go back to like throwbacks as their primaries. But that should be one of them. And also, I would like to say that, you've erected 2 statues outside of your ballpark to guys who played in that era, who jump started the Mariners in those uniforms in that era. Maybe show a little bit more respect to those uniforms, because they're great. They look incredible.
Yeah. I mean, it's my favorite hat in Mariners history. And to me, I think the jersey is a really good blend of late 80s nostalgia, minimalism, and uniqueness. I think it has a good balance of all those things. I think it's just a really, really good uniform.
Mm-hmm. But I'm sure it's a distant number 2 to the number 1, which
you don't have the same as.
It better be. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, you can finish it for me here. You tell the people what it is.
Seattle Steelheads.
Yeah, of course.
The black piping, the white,
it's amazing, amazing uniform.
Almost obviously, like an off-white jersey top with the black piping and just Seattle with the black S hat. Like,
it's straight to the point, right? I know some people on the, if you don't really know the story behind it or whatever, you just look at it and it's like, that's just kind of boring, whatever. But like that, to me, that's a baseball uniform, right? Through and through. Those things look great.
Baseball uniforms are supposed to be just kind of very minimalist.
JP Crawford and Julio Rodriguez look amazing in those uniforms. Like,
roll the pants.
I think that
up,
also,
wear the black sock.
also has to play into it. Like, how good does the aesthetic actually pair with the players that wear them, right? And there's a lot of Mariners, current Mariners, recent Mariners that look great in those uniforms.
They're pants up, get the black socks, the white.
Like, they're just so dope. The hat is dope. They're perfect. And then obviously there's a very important meaning behind those uniforms. They're just incredible uniforms. Perfect.
Yep. I feel like it's one of those things where it's like I feel like they should wear those more than once a year, but the fact that they only wear them once a year or are supposed to wear them once a year makes them more meaningful and more cool because it's kind of like a special event. So I would not be upset at all. Those were the new home. Just, if they wore those 81 times a year, that'd be fine. But also I do think that like the fact that they only wear them on the Juneteenth game, whenever they happen to be playing it, or they're supposed to wear them again.
Looking at you, Fanatics. Nike.
Major
League Baseball.
That probably, like, I'm totally cool if they just keep that as like the only time they wear them, but they're so sick. They're so clean.
They're so good. All right. So that's going to do it for our show. Let us know what your top fives for both of these topics would be, and let us know some other topics we should add to the wheel down below. Before we get out of here, a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Tidy Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Tidy Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.